Welcome to the Retribe podcast. I'm Nick Rothwell, founder of Retribe. This is a space for players, coaches, parents, and officials, anyone who wants to explore the human side of sport. Through real stories and shared experiences, we look at how sport and culture can evolve in a more connected way. So settle in and look forward to an honest conversation. Paxton, I've never edited anything, so
Oh, fair enough. There might be time for everything.
oh yeah, there might be. You know what? Swearing is okay. Everything is okay. I've always done this, like just hit the record and let her go. So,
Oh,
Paxton
it's
Schulte, how you doing, buddy?
not too bad. Not too bad. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah, just over like a few hours time difference from you over in the Czech Republic now, because I'm
Yeah,
living
yeah,
here. So it's a little bit different than Canada.
yeah. No, fair enough. Well, you guys get the four seasons there, I'm guessing, for the
Oh
most
yeah.
part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, the winters are getting more mild. I think just kind of like everywhere in Europe, they're just getting a little bit more mild. Like they've
yeah,
got a ski slope in the town center here, and they can only use it like one and a half months a year or something now. They used to be
yeah,
able to use it 3 or 4. So
yeah. And
yeah,
what about hockey teams there? Quite a
yeah,
few.
they've got a team. It's called Bereni Zlin, and which means the Zlin Rams, and
Uh,
they're in the second league, but
yeah,
they were a pretty good team for a while during the Peter Chayanek years. They were winning and stuff, and then just around the lockdown time, they got demoted. And getting
yeah.
promoted over here, it's almost impossible because in the playoffs, you have to play 3 rounds of playoffs in the second division before they play the bottom team from the first division who've not played any games. So they
Oh,
all fresh, and you're like, maybe a dozen games in and you're tired. So getting promoted is really, really hard.
yeah. No, fair enough.
Yeah. But Paxton Schulte, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my experience. Because I met you when you were in the with the Bracknell Bees during the Super
Yeah,
League
yeah.
time.
That's when I
And
was. Yeah,
yeah, and I was on TV, and I don't know, I just clicked with you right away. I got along really well with you. You're known as a guy who can handle himself on the ice as well, but you had an amazing career in the UK, which I can't wait to get into. But I just can't thank you enough for joining me now. I know it's early your time, but I can't wait for us to have a chat for the next hour or so.
oh, sounds good. No, it's I was lucky enough to, like you said, Bracknell be brought over by Dave Whistle, and then, like you said, just been lucky enough to be surrounded by lots of good fans, which became lots of good friends, such as yourself and numerous other people's throughout the UK, both like I said, Bracknell, England, and then over in Northern Ireland and Belfast. Yes, it was
Yeah.
awesome. I was lucky. I was really lucky.
Yeah, and you got to say that first year in Bracknell, that was a pretty stacked team. There were some good guys there. You guys won the league in the first Super League. Am I right? Is that the or
Um,
my
I'm trying to think. I know, and it's funny because I saw his name come up. I follow lots of the kids' stats and stuff, but Blazer. So he dressed, and I can't remember. We would have set a record, and I can't remember. I want to say it was our second year. I can't remember which year it was. If it was my first or my second, because I broke my ankle and didn't get to play in the playoffs. In I want to say Sheffield, maybe it was, or Nottingham that year, and Blazer had to dress because Nottingham didn't have enough players, and I hit him kind of the top of the circle in Bracknell on the Zamboni end, and both him and I went through the Zamboni doors. A couple of big boys, and we had a good chuckle about that. But yeah, those are just some of the memories. Yeah, I can't remember if it was the first or second year, but yeah, we did win one there with Whistler. It might have been the second year when we had Denny Chassé
Yeah,
with
and PC Druin, and yeah.
yeah, 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 and obviously Stewie, who's still there. He's can't get rid of that guy. Or
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
see
gonna
him.
hope he listens to this and I'll get him on as a guest.
Yeah, yeah, see him once in a while when he comes over, sees his in-laws in Sherwood Park here, so I'll sneak down for a drink or whatever, and yeah.
Nice, nice. Paxton, you like I said, I mentioned you were known for a guy who could handle himself and looked after his teammates. But like I said, I always remember you with a bit of a smile on your face. Maybe that's because we shared a few beers after games and stuff like that. But you were always a guy who seemed like that the teammates liked you, and you were very amicable and well liked, not just by your teammates but by the fans. And I'm wondering, like, where did that hockey player come from? I know you got drafted around the Eric Lindos time to Quebec Nordiques, right? You got drafted. You grew up in Alberta. Um, where did that professional Paxton, where did it start taking shape?
I don't know. I think, like I said, I want to say I put my hockey first, and just good manners and stuff coming from my parents and grandparents, professionalism. Just I don't know. I was a real student of the game. I like to watch the games. Look forward to dressing up, looking professional. But just like I said, I was always very personable. One of those kids in school where the teacher, maybe said, maybe let somebody else answer. You got too much to say, or, things like that. And then having lots of cousins and family, I think that plays into your teammates and just being family. Having someone to look after, and I do feel that I probably did. When I did retire, that was probably the single biggest thing that I miss most is a purpose and I think that happens with a lot of guys is what do I do now? For me, it was looking after my teammates. Not that I didn't have family, but that was something you did and was just part of your everyday routine was looking after your teammates, your family, purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know we're going to get into that as we talk, but I'd like to go a little bit further into, I like to talk about values in hockey and hockey culture and how we learned what we learned and how we got to where we are. And, so far on this series of podcasts, it's been Stan Marple, who grew up in Edmonton, Blazer, who grew up in Southern Saskatchewan, and yourself. And you all have these values that were taught to you by coaches and by parents and by players. And what were some of the things that you remember as you started to like when coaches particularly we're starting to tell you what right and wrong was like in terms of how you show up as a person, not just the on ice guy, but the values that you started to learn as a young man?
I think where I see it most as being a coach too is the biggest difference is well, mine started at home being on a farm, is you were given a task and you just did it. There was no questioning it, right? I think um, going going forward, you had a task, you did it, and you did because it had to be right. If you didn't do it right, cows got out, things got wrecked, money was lost, and at that time, like you said, money was at a premium. So, like I said, Dad never had an extra money, and I realize that now when it comes to the equipment and stuff I got and from my parents that I got everything and then some from them, right?
Mm,
Uh, so I think that's where it started. And then as I got into the coach, it's just a rite of passage. You got crappy jobs or so on and so forth, but you just did them. Like as a first year player, and I always call them first year vets, but rookies, right? Like there's a little we I didn't see too much rookie initiation, but you just did what you were told, and I think that was the same for me with coaches. Wasn't questioning, but like you said, I was lucky enough to have good coaches who explained the game, were students of the game, and so you learn stuff from them. But I think your work ethic, both on and off the ice, is very molded by your parents in that sense. So, I mean, I did have lots of good coaches. I mean, Terry Mazza comes to mind, um, Christensen with him, Brian Maxwell with the Spokane Chiefs, Jacques Martin, my first year in the American League. All really, really, good coaches, and uh, each one had something different to add to it.
Mm.
Uh, with Maslik, it was plays when I was younger. Maxi, it was discipline and accountability. Jacques Martin, conditioning and being a pro. So I don't think I ever questioned authority like you see on TV. Everybody, you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, and how many times do you speed and never get a speeding ticket, but yet you get one, and it's the end of the world, and you're in handcuffs and you're on TV, cops, So, like I said, I mean, there are rules. Um, are they all right? No. If they don't, I guess you have to talk about changing them. But for
Mm.
me, there wasn't a lot of questioning, and I think I was lucky enough to get what I think is lots of the right information at the right time. And then being that like I said, when you were given a task, you performed it to the best of your ability because it had to be the best, or things got wrecked, or money was lost, like I said, on the farm. And then I just guess comes from a mindset of not wanting to let your teammates down. Your coach is one thing, like you don't want to let your parents down, but your teammates are your family, and you want to do the best. So I don't think, and I've seen it in different teams. Last year, my son's team, guys didn't play for each other; they played for themselves. Like um, I heard a saying. It says, "You don't have to unscrew someone else's light bulb to see yours shine."
Mm.
I mean, so like you said, if you do all the right things, you will be noticed.
You mentioned that coaches instilled things like discipline and accountability, and that you were taught the right things at the right time. Do you think you were ever taught some things that may have hindered you in your progress? Some of the old, like the values of, like, I've talked to guys, and it was me, and it happened to me as well. Like, growing up in that culture in Saskatchewan in the 80s was like, with the coaches, they were very disciplined and hardworking, and they taught you a lot about the so that you could go into this world and be a good person. But they also taught you things like, don't let them see you hurt. Like, never ask, never complain about any injuries or anything like that. And those were
And
just little niggly things that happened to me along the way. I mean, my professional career was not as illustrious as yours, but there were little things that kind of hindered me along the way, where we weren't allowed to talk out if we were hurt. We weren't allowed to show emotions. We had to bottle things up. Otherwise, we were seen as weak.
no, that is a good point. Like I said, I think, like I said, if you're a bubble player, you're not going to mention your bumps and bruises, or have a trainer to speak up for you. And then I think along the way, so now being that I coached a little bit too, if I seen kids with an injury, there's a difference. There's injury and there's hurt. Like if it's a bump or a bruise, that's one thing. But if it's something that can that can manifest to become chronic, you need somebody to speak up for them. And I think I did a good job as a coach that way, recognizing that those kind of things. Funny enough, I never missed ever a game because of a concussion. You know what I mean? Like in those days, did I have one? I'm 99% sure I did. Um, but you played through those things, like you said. Lots of times, trainers were even afraid of the coaches to say so and so couldn't play, or whatever. And it didn't matter if you were the top player or the worst player. They expected that of you. Um, and yeah, that I guess that would be one thing. Crying, yeah, like I said, growing up on the farm, I don't think I saw my dad cry. Like 20 years, never missed a day of milking, sick, so the expectations were there. Like depression, if you work hard, things will go your way, right? And sometimes you need to look at, getting help, and it's okay, right? But like you said, there was expectations of working through things, um, that mental mindset, like I said, depression, and we've all seen it in hockey. I've seen guys that I played with, guys that played against, lots of lots of enforcers, especially that, like I said, they lose that sense of meaning and purpose, and they've taken their own lives and stuff like that. So I mean, now it's good, and I talk about the little bit of depression that I had about if you're if you have an iron deficiency, you take iron pills. If you're diabetic, if you're diabetic, you take insulin. Nobody sees any stigmas to that, right? You know what I mean? Like, but if you're have depression, and like I said, if one pill makes you a day makes your life and the people around you better, like what's the big deal, right? Like, and so I try and talk about it as openly as possible. You have a cold, you take cough medicine. You need antidepressants, you take a pill, big deal, right? It's nobody's business. You could have it and take it, but the fact that you can talk about it, maybe if you save one person's life, it makes a huge difference that way. But you're right, not crying, work hard, expectations of being tough, but I do think guys were tougher, even outside of these things. I think that even myself with my son, I think I want him to have it almost easier, but better and easier than I did. But sometimes growth comes through adversity and pain, right? And I don't mean suffering and you know an MCL ACL strain and making him go on the ice, but if it's not an injury and it's just hurts, that's what gets you to the next level, right? Is being able to find that next gear. And I always say toughness is not what you hand out, but what you can endure sometimes, like, and
Mm.
that's training, and that's a punch in the face so that your team can go on the on the power play. I see kids get punched in the face and they retaliate when they're on there. At the end of the day, you know what? You're there for your teammates, and your teammates will respect you more if you take that punch than if you try and look tough, right? Things like that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying is absolutely perfect, and people need to hear it. And there's everything from, you know, the way that guys our age grew up. I mean, I'm a bit older than you. I think I'm 54 and
just are you 71 or 72?
71.
I looked up your stats yesterday. That's why. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're really old.
What's that?
I said you're really old.
Thanks, bud. Um, I am older, and and though these are the things that when people say the kids today are a lot softer, and I think about whether they are weaker or whether or not we've just created an environment like you say, okay, if a player is really injured or if they're hurt, and I think that players have learned how to manipulate, because now we're more aware of it. We're more aware of concussion. We're more aware of tears. We're more aware of cracked bones. So we're going to be attending to that child differently. And maybe that child is lacking attention in somewhere in their life. So they're like, oh, wow, finally someone's paying attention to me. And then they're learning how to take advantage of, not in a bad way, but because maybe they're craving some attention in their lives. So then we've all of a sudden created a culture where kids are talking about every little bump and bruise, and we're not enabling them to build any resiliency. It's not the child's fault. It's not even our fault. It's just that we just are trying to navigate, growing up in the 80s, where we probably should have been able to say, hey, playing with a broken bone all year isn't good, right? So to today, where we're now looking for that thing where maybe we're not doing it the best that we can, and maybe we don't understand as much as what children are going through and their needs and their wants because we didn't have social media. So there's a lot of different pressures that youngsters are going through, and I know we'll talk about your son, and my stepsons, and how they're navigating the world of hockey and everything. But it's just this. I think what I'm really getting from you, Paxton, is that we can do better. We're knowing a little bit more. And it's about learning from the past so that we can, start implementing the things today that'll make people thrive and play the game with no, like, with no long-term health consequences.
And I agree with that too. But like you said, I've been on the internet too, and I should have been dead 4 weeks ago to because of certain websites. But you know what I mean? Like you start you start digging for certain things when sometimes a bruise is just a bruise. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Or a hamstring pull is just a hamstring, you know? And then that becomes, well, like that's why I'm not skating, that's why I'm not shooting, my hips aren't turning. And then it manifests to, you know what, maybe I'm just not putting enough time into either rehab or working on the skill.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's good to have information, and that gives you knowledge, gives you power. But like I said, you've seen it on many forums where there's too much information and what's true. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like if you're going out, and my cousin said it to Xander once, he's a chiropractor. Um, what can you handle and deal with personally, and how do you feel, how's your body feel, like do you feel good? You know what, yes, you might have a bruise or a tweak or a strain. Can you perform? Is it affecting you? Like you said, and that comes down to those limits too, like how much, not even pain threshold as much as, what is limiting you or what isn't limiting you to perform at your best, or just be healthy mentally, right? You know what I mean? Like I was once told, you're given, say you have 10 units of energy. So let's use this as a kid going to school. So you got two for homework, 2 units, two because your girlfriend was mad at you because you forgot that it was your 5 month anniversary in high school. So that's
Made it
four.
5 months. Woo.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have two because you're worried about the exam that you never studied. So that only allows you four for training in hockey or whatever else, right?
Mhm.
So it's how your time management is and where you are mentally to do that. So you remember to say hi to your girlfriend. You've put the time and effort in school. You have nothing there that allows you that much for that
Mm.
hour and a half at practice or 2.5 hours at a game to fully utilize it, which you talked about proper training and stuff. Coaches, I did a little bit of visualization when I was like 16, 17, and there wasn't a lot of it talked about until I got to Quebec with a guy named Jacques Plouffe. And then, like I said, now later on in my career, how much is that? I told some young guys that were waiting for trades from Xander's team that didn't report. They went to other teams. It said, you know what, the physical part is going to be the easy part of your game. It's what you have between your ears is the hard part. And getting back to what you said about like teaching these kids and their stuff is I guess time management. Um, like you said, looking after your injuries. I'm sure you have chronic injuries that had you iced them for the 4 or 5 days that you had them, plus three more when it felt good. You wouldn't have the arthritis in your wrist or your ankle or your knee, and so that knowledge about getting healthy, I think that's a good thing. I think two kids need more about the mental side of the game too, and I think it's getting there. And like I said, being transparent with parents when you're coaching.
Mm.
Like when I talk to kids, I never ever benched a kid because of bad play. I but if their body language or they were bad, not bad, but negative attitude towards their teammates, I think that's a learning thing too, right? Like if you make mistakes because you're trying, that's fine. But when you're doing it and it's a selfish reason or your body language is, and you're affecting your teammates around you, and
Mm.
that's when things. And if you tell parents that, I mean, that's just part of being, explaining it to them, whatever it needs to be, because I don't think, and I'm just that old, like you said about questioning authority.
Mm.
Like, it's good to have questions, but if it's not, like I told the parents, I'll never tell the kids to do anything that's going to hurt themselves or someone else, embarrass themselves or embarrass you. Like I said, but caring, like, if I'm talking to you, I care. If I'm yelling at you, I care. I'm not yelling at you because I like the sound of my own voice or whatever, but I do find that there's coaches that their best interests aren't the kids. And that comes down to just being a good or a bad person, where the coaches have to realize that every kid, until you're in the NHL, my job is to make you better and be happy for you when you leave the team a better person and a better player. So, they kind of go hand in hand, the pain and the mental stuff. But the mental stuff, I think, is the explanation of why I get upset, because I see more in you, or I expect more. I've seen you do it right before, and then you get lazy, and and then I understand different levels of hockey have different expectations, and that's where the coaches have to realize: are you playing AAA? Are you playing house league? And I you know what, now I play hockey to be in the dressing room and have fun with the guys. I don't
Yeah.
play because I'm getting better. I don't play because I did a good shot. I play because I can go out and just be silly in the dressing room, and put extra sock tape in someone's bag, or
Yep.
dump it, or
Yeah.
hide
Yeah.
their skate. So right
It-
from what I'm playing to the NHL, there's different expectations, but at the same time, what you have between the ears plays such a big part. You know,
yeah.
your mindset. Like, if you get up in the morning and say, "I'm going to have a bad day," already you've alleviated some of that stress of trying to be perfect. You know,
Mm.
and so you can go on with your day, and I think that happens in all aspects of life, and hockey and training.
I think we're learning more about how we can elevate human performance, and I think that that is very, very beneficial. But I think it's also confusing to players, to coaches, and to parents, because the more we're learning, the more we're trying to apply to that child or that team or to that coach, when not it's not a one size fits all approach. And as you're talking, I was, just that image of, you remember in Rocky 4 when Ivan Dragoff is doing his training? Do you remember? And he's got all the science stuff and all the
Oh yeah, yeah,
and then Rocky's just throwing rocks and running up and down mountains. And I feel like, we've gone away from some of those things that worked, and
yeah,
we're kind of confusing things too much with all of the technology and all of the podcasts, even though this one's going to be awesome. But all of the information, and it's for parents and coaches, it's overload. We're putting this all on to these young athletes, where the expectations, probably for parents, are going to exceed what that player can actually achieve, because you got a better chance of winning the lottery than making it into the NHL. Even though all parents want the high, want to achieve the highest for their children, that's just natural. But the expectations sometimes don't fit the athlete, and then you have these coaches who, whether it's like house league or beer league or AAA or junior, their expectations are, look at me, I'm the head coach and I've got to put all this pressure on me. And and that's when the behaviors of yelling and punishment and kind of fear-based coaching can really come out of a coach, because their expectations of themselves and the league that they're playing in are exceeding what people are expecting from them. So I
yeah.
feel like we're in a time now in 2025 where it's like all information overload, and it's really up to mindful coaches, mindful parents, to be able to sift through all of the noise, and
Yeah.
to really find out what is best for my child, what is best for my athletes, what's best for my team, what's best for my organization.
And I do agree with lots of that. You're absolutely right. And that's where I think, when I was lucky, just coming down to a work ethic, at the end of the day, I was not I don't think, and then there's no video of when I was younger, just talking to people like, was I any good? And they're like, you worked hard and you're always on the puck. And some of that comes down to, like I said, just hard work. Like at the end of the day, sometimes it's just overcoming the thresholds. Like for Xander and a young kid that trained with him, some of it was running hills and just finding that what your body was capable of. And a hill is just a hill with some plyometrics and running and sprints and bounding and stuff like that. Like, and nothing special like Drago and Rocky or anything like that. It's just finding what your body's capable of. And there's guys out there, and we've all seen it, and it's such a cliche, as we've seen guys that had more talent in their pinky than we had in our whole body, yet they only ever played junior because they had no drive, or they couldn't get over the motivation and discipline of things. The kids, and I did lots of things wrong with Xander, trying to push him to play ahead, thinking that he had to have one step up and play ahead of himself. And I was different because I played ahead of myself. And but like I said, for finding for Xander now as I'm getting older, and still I have expectations of him because I see him do lots of good things,
Mm,
and I'm capable of it. But he does lack a confidence in himself, which has come around in the last year and a half, and you can see it in his game. Um, but like I said, for him, I when I do text him, I kind of finish everything with, what, go out and just have fun.
that's
and
it. Yeah.
and when you don't have that weight of the world sitting on your shoulders, I think that's part of it too. Like hockey had not become fun for me anymore when I retired in Belfast, and I regret not going back after that. I think if I would have sit back, and even at that point in my career, taken a few months and mentally become right in my head, and then needed that break, it just everything compounded,
Mm,
uh, and I just had enough. But like I said, when you can go out and just have fun,
yeah.
uh, that's good. And you talk about coaches yelling. You know what? You don't have to yell at your players if you have taught them and coached them properly on the ice. You know what I mean? Like if you've taught them the right things to do and you get work ethic out of them, you're still going to get production and results. And that's the, how they perform is definitely a reflection of the coaching. So if kids are all over they're focusing on the wrong things, and you said each kid is different, and you might have one kid, I might be talking to you, Nick, and say this is how it is, and you know how to do it. Go in the corner. I want big angle, look over your shoulder, turn the puck up ice, one touch it, pass. I don't even have to write that on the board. Next kid, I tell them, I write it on the board. Next kid, I take them, walk it through them once, maybe twice. But like
Mhm.
I said, every kid is different. And some kids pick it up by verbally, sometimes it's visually, sometimes it's physically, like you said, walking it through. And that's a reflection of the coach, just like discipline. If I find, and I always took it personally, if my kids are undisciplined on the ice, then that was the lack of respect for the team and the coaching. So how do you get through to that kid that taking that punch in the face is more important for the team, and the team will recognize that, and you will be rewarded. And as like because the kid took a punch, maybe he does deserve to be on the power play. And coaches sometimes, lack recognition, whether it be a
Mm,
pat on the back, or lots of times you'll say, doesn't show up on the score sheet, but in the dressing room, you say, look at Nick. He blocked 3 shots there. He's got the bruises to prove it. You know what? He sat on the bench for an extra 3 shifts, because so the power play could score those 2 goals, and we can have a win and a nice bus trip. So here, Nick, you know what? Everybody make sure Nick knows that you guys appreciate him. Little things like that.
I wonder too, like, you're saying like when you text your son, make sure you have fun, just have fun. And that's what I say to my little Zach every time he goes to the ice, I say, okay, have fun. And every time he comes off the ice, I ask him, did you have fun? And one of the slides that I have in a presentation of mine is like, they're called players for a reason. Let them play. And I feel too that when like when guys like us, when we talk about growing up in the prairies and stuff, we talk about the outdoor rinks -20, not kind of afraid to laugh because we might crack our faces, but there was so much joy in scrimmage hockey, right? There was so much fun playing outside. And then I was talking to Blazer the other day, and he's like, "No kids play outside anymore." And our my
Nobody, nobody of competitive. You're right, because
yeah,
they're too many coaches have them on the ice or off ice 4 to 5 times a week. So there's no time to have that fun. You know what I mean? And I agree. Like I said, Blazer, they of competitiveness, they don't. But guys that are, you know, just having fun are guys that are, always want to have the opportunity to play hockey and have that fun, and they get together with their buddies and they still go out and I sharpen their skates 24/7 here during the winter, and they're in all the time, doing what they can, getting out whenever they can. And yeah, but you're right. They don't. And my dad even said there's something about that is just getting out and doing it. You locked up there?
you there, bud?
Yeah. I'm not sure what happened. Can you see me?
Yeah, no, I don't know. It was a Wi-Fi break, folks. It says we're recording, so I'm hoping that it'll stitch together later. But carry on what we were saying. We were
Well,
saying
you said, Blazer, about kids playing outside, and I'm not sure what was. Maybe I'm repeating myself, but um, kids that are playing any kind of organized hockey now at a higher level, you're right. They're not out on the ODRs or the lake or whatever, because the coaches have them 4 to 5 times a week, whether it be off ice or on the ice, or playing games. And guys that couldn't afford it, they're out there having fun, trying stuff that McDavid does, and against buddies that have never played before, hardly ever skated, and they're doing it. And so they're feeling all the love, like you are winning the Stanley Cup, and those guys are having fun. And there's something to be said about just perfecting. Are you there still?
oh yeah, yeah,
Oh, you don't move, so that's what happened last time. So
yeah.
So you're right. There's lots to be said, and just getting out on the rink, and I know, I guess too, the ODRs, there's a lot more accessibility to being indoors now too, which is fine. I mean, go out and play shinny there with your buddies if they have free ice or free shinny and things like that. But you're right. The fun cannot leave the game. I mean, some people play. I don't think anybody ever started playing thinking about the NHL. It was just fun or a God-given talent. And I'll send you a thing later. Remind me, it's a I want to say he's a Australian sports psychologist who talks about rugby, talent and work ethic. And he has 4 boxes about how no talent, no work ethic. Those kids, any sport, probably aren't going to go anywhere. Then you got the kids with talent and no work ethics. Lots of those will succeed. Then you'll have kids with work ethic and no talent, but those kids are going to succeed more than the kids with talent and no work ethic. And then you have McDavid, talent and work ethic. Uh, Crosby too, that are those kids are you don't have to worry about. And he talks about, how do I know how good my kid is, right? And those kids just, they follow their God-given talent was, and what what motivates them and what makes them happy, right? And everybody, when you're good at something, it's easier to have more fun at it. I don't know about you. Like, if I was good at playing piano, I'd play the piano, but I can read music and that's about it. Like, so
What
so
I can do.
it's fun, like you said, because I have to work at it. But if
Yeah.
I spend time at it, it might be a different story. So like I said, for myself and lots of kids that are good at hockey, that's why they play it. It's easy to them, and sometimes the work ethic isn't there. And then the guys that don't want to work, that's when they tail off. So, like I said, it doesn't become fun for them. And fun is, like I said, everything is when you're happy, and when you're happy and things are going smooth in your life, everything's easier. It's the adversity, and like you said, going out and trying things and having fun on the ice reminds you of why you play the game, as opposed to being fed information 24/7 from your coach. And that's where, like you said, we get back to the mental part of the game. And I think you got to keep it fun for the kids for as long as you can. And that goes with having an advisor and your parents not being down. Let them deal with coaches and scouts and stuff like that, so you can focus on having fun.
Yeah, and I think as parents listening to this, you got to figure out what age your child is. In the early ages, like the 8, 9, 10, they like to have fun. Yelling at them, yelling at kids at any age, it just puts them into a fear state. No one in a fear state is going to learn. We all know this now because of like neuroscience and people studying how people learn best. And it's about creating that environment where they can thrive, they can feel safe to make mistakes, because it's in mistakes that we learn. And having the joy of the playing, you're going to hold your stick lighter, you're going to push your edges a little bit farther, you're going to fall down. The coach is going to say good job for pushing those edges. You'll grab it next time, and instead of being yelled at for falling down. And I think it's about really understanding where your youngster is, what age they're at once they start getting into the 12s, 13s, 14s, and how they physically develop. But as human beings, you've mentioned a few times, we've only learned through adversity and through being challenged. And it's about creating those environments and those practices where you can push the children to the edge, not not yell at them for making a mistake, encourage the mistakes. That's where they learn. So
Yeah.
I think it's in that knowledge, it's in knowing that stuff that we can do better.
Oh, 100%. And I think, finishing on a positive, like, this one always comes up to me because it was kind of the first time when it clicked for me, when I was coaching and had a kid and they did everything right. I said, you know what? You carried the puck, you had the opportunity, you know, you got 2 feet from the red line, and then you iced it, right? And now, they came back and so the next part of that is making that extra 2 feet, and you've completed the process. You were 2 feet. So you know what? Good job up until that point, and then next time you'll know that this is how you complete the process, right?
Mm.
I find kids need more explanation because there's more questions. As
Yeah.
like I said, for me, I never questioned authority. Luckily, I was given the right information, or at least what I thought, the right information to do things. But sometimes kids need to know why they have to do that. And it, like I said, and in that same scenario, like, you get up to the red line, you ice it, and then, okay, it's icing. There's a change. They come down. Your team's in your own end. We lose the face off and they score. So whose fault is it? Is it the team, the guy that lost the face off, or is it the kid that didn't make the red line for the icing? Right. So you can explain. Because we didn't get the red line, team, it put the other guys in a bad situation to start with. you
Mm.
know so don't make the puck someone else's problem. If it's on your stick, you know what you can do with it. You know what I mean? You let it be your problem, because you have it. You dictate the consequences, or the outcome of what happens with that puck. But as soon as you get rid of it, Well, it's not your problem. That's not the case, right? Like that's why it's called a team sport. Like so if you can answer these questions for the kids, they might see it in a different light as well, right? Just the explanation how everybody you know gets things. In the NHL, even it sticks out in my head because I use it quite often. There's a guy going back, I can't remember, defenseman or forward, and he had lots of time to beat this Vancouver guy to the puck. Well, this is all the way. So all he has to do is, if he just gets to the puck, takes the hit, that puck. But otherwise, he kind of slows up, lets the other guy get it. He comes all the way around, skates to the far blue line, makes a dipsy doodle, passes it, and they score. And then that play starts in the other end. So what do you see there? All you see the goalie and on the highlights, the guy scoring. You don't see the player that could have taken the hit or just even got a stick on it to keep it in the corner so the guy couldn't continue his momentum. And I find that that's where lots of the coaching has come to, is the explanation, like being able to tell the kids why it's important. Not just, and when I played, you go in there and you take the hit. Not,
Mm.
there's, well, why should I take the hit? Well, in this instance, you take the hit so this guy can't skate it all the way up the ice and ends up in the back of our net, right? When you turn on TSN or ESPN or what's the, I forget the channel over there.
Sky
That's,
Sports
what's that?
guy.
Sports, yeah. So you turn on Sky Sports and you see McDavid make 16 guys look silly on the ice, but you didn't see the good pass from Ekholm that put him in a position to do that, right? You just see McDavid turning guys inside out, or anybody taking a hit, right, to get the puck up the boards so the breakout was good. All the kids ever see is the dipsy doodle and the Michigan. They don't see the Derek Ryan getting to the red line and absolutely getting destroyed at 5'10", 160 pounds, so that the puck gets deep and Draisaitl and McDavid can make the goalie look silly, right?
Yeah, there's always the plays before the plays, right?
Yeah, and like you said, giving that recognition as a coach so that everybody is inclusive in the team, right? And that's where,
That's why you have like teams like Florida that are so successful, because Maurice just looks down at the full lineup and he's got every guy is a cog in the machine, and they all
yeah,
fulfill a role. And it doesn't matter, if you're scoring the goals or if you're stopping the goals or if you're blocking shots, you're all included in the fact that we get here because we all perform as a unit rather
yeah.
than individuals within a team. So, Paxton, I want to do a little throwback to '91 when you get drafted by Quebec. And I saw the other day, you got drafted, and I was thinking Quebec, that was around the same time that Lindros went.
Yeah, so I think Lindros
It was
was
a year before.
yeah, Lindros was 90. Lindros was 90 because I think the 91 is Lindros.
I think 91 too. Yeah, yeah. And
And
you were 92, right?
yeah, yeah.
So still, I mean, that Quebec Nordique's pretty cool logo. Um, but you get drafted into the NHL, and that journey there, and then you're what was that like? What was it like? Did you ever think that you'd get drafted?
Um, well, like you said, I when I started at 17, I was rated 63rd. So that would have been my first draft year, 1990, 63rd amongst North American draft picks. So that's where I was rated. But at that time, as an 18-year-old, you had to go in the first 3 rounds. So that would have been 21 teams at that time. So I would have had to go in the top 63, and that was only amongst North American. So I don't know that I was, obviously you're hoping you see your name in the hockey news, the paper hockey news, not the digital.
Mhm.
And then the next year I went to North Dakota, the big, their powerhouse. So I thought, what, I go there. My opportunity is good. There's 7 freshmen. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I'll get drafted. then not even a sniff, not even rated, right? And then I go to Spokane, have a great season, lead the team in scoring, and I'm rated 38th in the draft. And that was the year they opened it up to Russians and 18-year-olds. So that pushed me down to 124th. I mean, I always hoped it, and my dream was, well, my first dream was to be a cowboy. My second dream was to be a hockey player once. Like you said, it started coming easy and right, God given talent. So I just followed my path. So I always hoped that. And once it happened, I had my tears in the Montreal Forum with my dad and my agent. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I just forget because of so many concussions. But did I ever think I'd get drafted? I think always. I know I always hoped to play in the NHL. How's that?
Yeah.
Being drafted, I guess, is the precursor. But when you're young, you never think of before. You always want the result, right? Like I was playing the NHL and I was going to pay my dad back everything I owed him, and I'm still paying him back. and but that's like you don't think that. Oh wait, what if I'm not good enough and I don't make like my first year pro? I made 35,000 Canadian. I think it was like 48% tax in Quebec. So that means I'm getting 52% of my wage out of $35,000, and they had a 7% GST and a cent provincial sales tax. And then people are like, "Well, do you golf in the summer?" I'm like, "No, I work so I can work, so I can make money and hopefully further my career, Now, and that's another thing that these guys have the luxury of. I wouldn't say everybody, but lots of guys have a salary that allows them to train in the summer so they don't have to work. You know what I mean? And so the teams look after their picks both physically and mentally more than any kind of things like you said, a trainer talking about speaking up to the coach about an injury. Well, now at these young guys that are drafted and get a signing bonus or whatever, they can train in the summer and have personal trainers, or if they're a high draft pick, the team will assign someone to them and look after them. Whereas before, you're on your own, everybody for themselves, right? The teams, if you made it, you made it. If you didn't, well, we'll just draft somebody else or trade for somebody, right? So that's a luxury of some of the kids. They don't have that. I need to work, and then when you get there, you appreciate it and you want to stay there. You know.
And we started the show off with talking about you making it over to the UK, starting off at Bracknell. What was your like summarize your time in the UK and playing for Bracknell and Belfast, and what was Bracknell that time, the Super League era, many will refer to as probably the best hockey that's been played in the UK. Certainly from the time when I was there in the 90s to the late 90s in the Super League, man,
Well,
I'm glad I was on TV because
yeah.
it was pretty cool just
No,
watching it all.
you look at like Stewie, and nothing against Stewie, but a defenseman putting up 100 and some plus points, right? Like that's just unheard of. Those are Bobby Orr numbers, and but like so when I come over to Bracknell, I was lucky. Like you said, you had Colin Ward, you had Stewie, uh, Kelman, and like I said, just guys that I was lucky, and like I said, Stewie and Morty are just awesome people on and off the ice. Morty's just a nut, and Stewie's just he's a great guy and have your back all the time. That quiet guy that'll pommel you if you do something wrong, but goes about the business and day in and day out, and he knows work ethic and commitment and discipline and then Wiss too, right? Like I respected him as the coach, but when you're at what was it called? What was the nightclub there? Après
Bracknell.
Après Noir, I think, right? After night, I think another one of the nightclubs or whatever. Then you're just your friends and stuff like that. So it was definitely a different atmosphere, like a little bit less pressure away from the rink, to be to perform that way. But once you got to the rink, you were all business, and it was a smaller venue for sure, smaller, older rink, which I hear is not there anymore. And but the guys were good, and the people were great, and you were appreciated. And no, it like I said, I was, maybe it's just because of the player I was and the person I was, but I was lucky to have the fans I did, and the connection to the community, and the game itself, right? Like it was fun. It really was fun, right? Uh, I honestly, I guess, if I'm being totally honest, coming over, I kind of maybe took it for granted that the hockey wouldn't be as good, but it was, you know what, like you said, you still had guys that were good hockey players playing. For whatever reason, they left North America or whatever to come play overseas, and still continue there, and then, just rekindle the fun and the competitiveness, and sometimes just a change of venue just, you know gives rebirth to a career.
Mhm. What was it like over in Belfast? I mean, I loved going over there and covering games. It was just it was just an amazing thing to see hockey, in Belfast, a divided city for so long, being united by hockey, and having all these people come there from all over the community. And then there were guys like you that Belfast really did lean on in terms of the face of hockey. So I'm sure there was a lot of pressure you off the ice as well as being an ambassador for the game there. But Belfast was a special place when you were there.
Oh, definitely. And like I said, I think now it's still the only non-policed sporting event that serves alcohol, in at least in Northern Ireland. So that says something. You have friends of both Protestant and Catholic that are being married. There was that separation. Um, yeah, there was so much. Like I said, I was lucky. I was a hard man, and I think you say about the acceptance, and this goes back to doing things right. If you do things right, I think I think everything else falls in place. Like you said, I was accepted, but I think I like I and as I got by my fourth year, some of the guys, they didn't realize, what, they distanced themselves from some of the fans. But at the end of the day, the fans are the people that pay for your existence there, right? So if submerge yourself in the community, the game, you work hard on the ice, you play for the team, and when we were playing in Belfast, or at least I felt when I was playing in Belfast, because it was so new, I was playing for Northern Ireland, Belfast, the city of Belfast, the fans, right? So I wanted to represent them in a way that didn't embarrass them. So I wanted to make sure that everything I did was um, beneficial to the growth of the game, the community, so on and so forth. There,
Were you there when during the NHL lockout when Theo came over?
I was left. So I left. 0304 was my last season, and then 0405, yeah, 0405 was when Theo was there with a bunch of
Oh,
guys.
he wasn't sober then yet, so I can imagine that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's probably not the best town. Well,
No.
UK period, best place for anybody that ever you walk around every corner and there's a pub or a distillery or someone drunk because of the pub.
Well, the
So
guy's over 20 years sober now, so he's
yeah,
done it. Yeah,
yeah, oh, for sure.
yeah.
Uh, Now, like they said, that hockey wouldn't last, and I've only seen the pictures and been over for a few testimonials, but the crowds are
Mm.
second to none there. I think they probably. I'm guessing they have to have one of the best attendance records
Oh,
in all the EI.
yeah, them Sheffield's like averaging 7,000, 8,000, and then I think you have like Nottingham and Belfast there, and then Cardiff
Yeah,
running. So there's
saying that. I mean, I'm guessing of actual capacity of buildings.
yeah.
Bel- because Belfast, I think, is 50 some. without the back of the horseshoe in, and then around 7 with the horseshoe. So if you're looking at field capacity, they're at capacity most days kind of thing.
Yeah, I used to love going over there and watching games, and they're still doing a great job. With Stevie Thornton and Keefe there, they're doing a great job putting bums on seats and
Yeah.
but they're always going to be up there. They're a great organization. And so when you left Belfast, it wasn't the end of your career. You went back to North America for a while, and then when did you start to think I'm going to wind this up?
Um, I well, like so 0405 I played senior triple for a play it's Stony Plain Eagles. They've won the Allen Cup, which you probably know of, and uh for the best team. Actually, I think the Allen Cup at one time was open to any amateur team to play against, even NHL teams. I don't know how it goes. I'd have to look it up, but the Allen Cup. And then when Xander was born, I figured, you know what, I called Joey Ferriccioli, and he was coaching in Amarillo. And I said, do you have a job for me? I just thought I'd go back for a year. Well, Xander was a baby. I'd get to spend time around him, and played in Amarillo and Tulsa another year, 05, 06. And then I played another year of senior triple, and then didn't play for a while. And then my hometown got a AA team, so I played a couple years there. And then actually just recently, last year I played some men's in like Div 14. So you got all kinds of walk of life. And this guy wanted to fight me, so he slashes me, and I kind of slash him on the way back up, and I said, "You do that again, I'm gonna knock your effing teeth out." And he goes, "Let's go then." And I'm not that I'm anybody special, but like I'm pretty sure my 2,000 professional minutes are not all tripping, and I'm thinking, "Do you know who I am?" And he goes, "Who are you?" I said, "You should find out." So I followed him around for another 10 seconds, and I'm like, I better change before I do something stupid. So I'm not playing this year in a men's league, but I've been lucky enough to get attached to the Oilers alumni skates. They have a couple times a month with Chris Joseph got me in. And so we go down, and they give us park underneath at Rogers Place, and give us pizza and beer afterwards, and get to have that locker room banter without having to worry about somebody slashing you or
Next to
hit.
McDavid space.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Schulte and number 98.
yeah. So it's yeah. So there was it's fun. Like you said, I go down and get to, like I said, there's a few guys that I still run into. Jared Bednar, who coaches with the Avalanche, and get to talk to him. So I always try and go down earlier, and kind of a highlight. And like I said, I'm 53 years old, but last year I'm going out, so I see uh, uh, Marc Andre Fleury walking before with a couple of the guys are going to like stretch out. So I'm walking out to the rink, and so I just nod, and he smiles. Okay, cool. Come back in. I forgot my water bottle. So this time he's coming out with his suit on, and I'm like, you know what? If I don't do it, I'll regret it. So I say, Mr. Fleury, thank you for all the highlights you've given us, and I shake his hand, and he smiles. Thank you very much, he says. Like, that's what the hockey's about, is being a kid, right? Remembering who you are. And I think getting back to Belfast, the importance for me being so much trying to be, and I think I was part of the community, is I once went to an Oilers open practice, and I took my stick, and I'm like, I'm gonna get this signed. Well, I get there, and in the old Coliseum, I think it's 16.5. Well, it's packed. And I'm sitting way high. There's nowhere I'm getting near of it. So anytime I just remember the feeling I felt not being able to connect with these players. So anytime somebody took the time to acknowledge me as a player or a person, I think it was important that I gave back, because I didn't want anybody to feel like I did, you know.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. I can just imagine as a little kid seeing that. And And I know you've given a lot of those moments to players, Paxton. So, or sorry, to fans and to just to people and to your teammates. You've given a lot of those moments because I know you are a very giving guy, and you know, you still are involved a little bit on the ice. You're a father of Xander, who is going through his hockey journey. You've been coaching, but I want to talk about Xander. What are the challenges of having an elite hockey player in your kind of your grasps of helping mold, in this world when it's changed so much from the time you were a kid.
I think, like you said, we talked about this, and sometimes, and I say it two ways. Knowing so much, you might, I've probably lost focus at times to the just Xander being happy on the ice. Um, and so I do say too, the more I know, the less I know, in the same sense too, and I think the downfall for me would be maybe at times losing focus on what he wants and him being happy. Like maybe when he needed to hear more encouragement, I was more critiquing. I think now that we're older, and I've realized that in the last couple 3 years now that he's been in junior, is that we can talk and like, do you want me to do would you like to hear what I thought about the game? More asking, and he'll say yeah, and I'll say, you know what, you did all these things good, and I've seen you do this better.
Mm.
This is something that maybe you got away from. Even for me, sometimes I say it's almost better that you don't know anything. I can remember times in my junior career, my mom will see me play because she always was worried about me getting hurt. She'll see me play once every 20 games, and she'll say, well, how come you didn't do this? Then
Mm.
I'll look back at myself and reflect and say, you know what? Yeah, when I was doing that, things were going well. Why am I not doing that? So, you know what I mean? Like someone who doesn't see you all the time or doesn't know the game asks questions about things that maybe are overlooked at time. You see the final product, and like you said, not what got you there, the steps leading up to it. And sometimes I think I miss those things for myself, for Xander, and just ultimately, what, how is he feeling? And maybe just as a parent, you know what, maybe just not saying anything and just putting your hand on his lap or a hug. And I've been there too, where Xander come up and he's injured, and he's done everything he can to continue. And yet, do I want him on the ice, and can he help the team? Yes, but he's injured, and just give him a hug, and both of us in tears, right? And sometimes that's all your kids. Like the one time, the thing that lifted a weight off of my shoulders is and I think it was the first time I saw my dad cry, is we're driving back, and I think I was about 14, 15, and he says, I love you, and I just want you to be happy. And that just made everything worth it.
Yeah.
You know, it was nothing about hockey, but I knew that, and not that dad never did care, or and he never was the guy to say as much anything. He just watched and enjoyed the hockey, but for some reason that those comments um, just really lifted a weight off my shoulder. And I think one, I continued on, which I was going to, and yeah, just I don't know, it just one of those things, it just kind of hits home, and you you care, like it's just I don't even know how to explain it. It opened doors, enlightened me, lifted, like there was so many emotions, um, like you said,
Yeah,
men were supposed to be strong. Like
yeah.
I'm not supposed to tell anybody I love them. You just know. Dad's, like there's a song called Daddy's Hands, if you've ever listened to it. I don't know if you've ever heard that one.
Yeah, I listen to Cat Stevens, and that gets me going. When he talks about,
so whatever, like I said, what do they call it? Pandora's box of
fuck,
emotion.
yeah,
and good, and you know it was all good. Like it's just you know, so
You know
any
what?
getting back just to parents, if you want to be supportive and have if your kids are happy and loved, that everything's going to go well for them. You know, just that, something as simple as that. It sounds cliche, but you know what, if they're when they're loved and they know they're cared and they're happy, they're going to be they're going to listen, they're going to be more disciplined, things are going to come easier to them. You know, I and that I think that's in any aspect of life.
I was going to ask you to give your advice, to parents, and I think that's perfect advice. And I think that that's one thing, my guy's 9 and he'll come off of a practice. I watch a lot. He'll come out during the practice. I'll be thinking to myself, oh, I want to mention that to him. I want to mention that to him. Then after practice comes and he comes up to me with a smile on his face, we get into the car and nothing comes out. Nothing comes out of my mouth other than, did you have fun? And do you want to go to McDonald's? Like I don't, because during the, like, there's things I think I can give him advice on. And then it's just like, it doesn't matter. This kid, all he needs from me is my love, my safety, and to know that his needs are met. And I'm not saying McDonald's is a good idea every day, folks, but it's a treat. And
Yeah,
as you were talking, Paxton, and when your dad told you that he loved you, I could feel the emotion in you, like it's, I could feel your emotion. And I want people to understand that this is like a powerful thing. When you can regulate emotions, feel emotions, you are unleashing our human potential, our human power. Instead of bottling things up, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say, just let it out. There's
yeah.
so much
Oh,
beauty in the truth and the emotions and feeling. And, like I say, like in all of this talk, I could feel you, really thinking about that bit with your dad and how it made you feel. And all of the stuff that we've been talking about, hockey, coach, and it's that moment about that communication with your dad being something that was so powerful.
yeah. And I, like you said, and not to get away from the emotion and how much I care about my dad, and but you with your little guy, and lots of times too now I find Xander in my growing experience as a parent and a coach is, if you ask what were you guys working on in that drill, and you ask them, and then they'll say, well, we're trying to do this, and then it reminds them of things, even if they were doing it bad. You ask him about what the coach wanted him to do. Well, we're working on our edge work. And even if you saw his edges weren't, he'll be like, oh yeah, I was working on my edges and this is what I was doing. Or during a play in a game, what happened on that play? Well, I got the puck on my stick. I didn't take my first, two strides like I should have, or I bobbled the puck. I got it in my feet. I didn't get it up. Instead of saying, why didn't you get that puck out? You know, the, they can
I'm
explain
good. Yeah. Yeah.
they can explain the process to you, and then you can say, oh yeah, well, I thought you did a pretty good job of that, and getting it onto your stick, and you know what, too bad that guy, the puck wasn't on your stick. You could have got it up to the guy next to you, as opposed to, like, everybody has their piece of the pie and part of the thing. So that's how you can approach it. Say, what happened on, or what were you guys trying to do on that play, or like on the power play? How come you didn't shoot it right away? Well, the coach wants us to move the puck 2 or 3 puck touches, and instead of saying you should be shooting more, or trying to create that conflict between you and the coach, or just ask them what was going on as opposed to telling them what they should have done.
Mhm.
Because realistically, like I said, when we're sitting watching any game, soccer, football, rugby, hockey, we can see the play developing. But when you got somebody 190 pounds barreling down on you, and that puck flips up on you in the corner, like, how come you just didn't put it on your stick and skate it? Well, there's so many other things that are going on, right? Like, I you didn't see it, but I toe picked, or the guy was yelling to me and they couldn't hear him, or so like I said,
Well,
sometimes asking your kids how
yeah.
they felt about practice, and if they go on, I wasn't very good about shooting, and you can pull out things like, you know what, no, you had some really good shots. This is just keep working on it. Even if you know that your kid, he's right. His shooting wasn't great, but pull out the couple positives that he did have. You had those couple shots. You beat the goalie 5-hole. You said keep working on it. You can do it. I thought you had a good practice and you worked hard, and you know what, and pull the positives out of it as opposed to, like you said, well, your edge work or your
Done
pass
that. Yeah.
off. Like even Xander, I'll go and watch on a Tuesday. Lots of times I have the day off and go watch him and just that was a good practice, or I joke with him too, like he did a skating drill the one day and they work out before and he was last. He says, yeah, I bet you're glad that practice is over.
Mhm.
LOL. And so
Paxton, at the beginning of this talk, over an hour and 15 minutes ago, I think we've been on here for quite a while. You talked about how we are learning more about ourselves and the mental aspect of it. The depression can sneak in, and if we can recognize these things, we can treat them. But for you, you mentioned that you had some bouts with depression. When did they come around? Was it when you played? Was it after you played?
I think I was playing. I had made the Sherwood Park Crusaders, so as a 16-year-old, the and I was driving to and from practice, and it was about an hour and 15. And at that time, it wasn't like junior where you practice during the day. Now they do it just like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And so I was practicing and back and forth. And the driving, I was doing my university entry level classes too. So quite a good workload balancing school and hockey because I was trying to get a scholarship, or I knew that's the direction I wanted at that time. And so I'm sitting in class. Mr. Roslick was the teacher. I put up my hand and I said, "Mr. Roslick, can I leave the room?" And he knew something was wrong. I'd known him for lots of years, and he said, "Yeah." So I went out and just started crying in the hallway. And so I ended up going home, had some dark thoughts. Nothing came of it. Quit hockey for a couple weeks. Then I went back to my midget team. And yeah, then I went back to playing. And next year I moved but it wasn't until I was probably, so that was 16. I probably didn't deal with it till my second, maybe even third year of American League. Like I said, I was always taught if you work hard, good things will happen to you, right? And then I started taking antidepressants, Paxil, I think it was called, and then now I'm off it. But whenever I get my anxiety or stuff, I'll talk to whoever's closest to me. I have a good work uh, mate at work, and we talk about stuff and stuff. So, like I said, I try and just talk about it, and I have ups and downs, but that's how it goes for sure.
Thanks for sharing it, because I think that we always think, and I would have seen you playing again, hard worker, great player, um, loved by the fans, loved by the teams, drop the mitts, fight with anybody, but a smile on your face after. And like I said, I've got some really fond memories of hanging out with you. And I always said this is a podcast with a purpose. And we've talked about playing, we've talked about coaching, we've talked about parenting, but also our ability to ask for help, our ability to cry, our ability to show emotions, our ability to ask, like, people around us for support, is it underpins a life of success, not just surviving but
Yeah,
thriving, because we're, as human beings, we're designed to have people around us that help support us. And I think that we live in a world that shames men asking for help, that shames men in saying that they're struggling with mental health, because of this perception of what a real man is like, and a provider and paying the bills and all this stuff that's BS, and like it's just these pressures of us not being able to open up and ask for help. And if anybody, is hearing Paxton Schulte, a star, a legend of UK hockey, being able to be open and vulnerable about challenges. And that means that you can be too, because I really believe that real men ask for help.
I think if you look at any successful person, man or woman, I mean, and the support group, your support staff, just like any good business or anything, you have good people surrounding you. It's I mean, you have leaders for sure that are alphas and so on and so forth, but at the end of the day, the people that help you get to where you need to be, like I said, for me, my parents, my family, my teammates, friends like such as yourself, like just being able to talk about it. Um, that's what you very rarely will you see somebody that's done everything on their own and is successful. Like at the end of the day, like the guys that that are millionaires, they've established good businesses because they put good business people in the right spots to help them build those businesses. You know what I mean? And motivated people and disciplined people or like I said, I had an old guy that was Gord Ball was his name. He's passed away unfortunately. The kids loved him and he was in the dressing room, but for me, the stories he told gave me experience, and just having him on the staff, made me a better person, made the kids happy in the dressing room, and little things like that, stories that might seem insignificant to others, made a huge difference in kids' lives, my life, gained experience, things that you might not have thought about. So, like you said, the more people that you have helping you, the more knowledge you get too, like whether it be from yourself, from a book, the internet, you never know now. But like I said, anybody supporting you and like you said, just knowing that, and the biggest stipulation is all I can think of is, and I think growing up, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but lots of times people with disabilities, you don't, and that goes with, when I say disabilities, that goes with depression too, is, well, I'm going to catch depression from them. I'm going to catch Down syndrome. I'm going to catch, uh, amputee from them. Like you don't associate with people because of, like I said, the stigmas. You're not going to catch anything from them. Everybody's a person. Like some of your best lessons. Like a friend of mine, his son. I'm actually at noon today. I'm fitting his son with Down syndrome, and the kid is the most positive kid I've ever seen and funny. And like I said to his name's Braden. And I said, you know what, Braden, we need more people like you around because you're so happy all the time and funny. And you know what? That's a lesson that you know what? When you're happy, things come easily, and the people, it's contagious. If you're gonna catch anything, it's gonna be happiness from that kid. And I'm no, no, I just met him the other day and I went to school with his dad, but you know what? The kid is positive and I'm not worried about catching Down syndrome. I don't think he's worried about catching depression from me, because he's so positive, and so I'm looking forward to going to see him at noon today.
Well, I will. I've kept you a long time. I'll let you get ready so you can go have.
Well, you can always call me if you just want to chat too. It's
Well,
always
you know,
fun just talking about everything and anything, and like you said, the beers, the yeah, the beer. There was a few beers.
there was. Yeah, there's a few things that we'll share on another day.
Yeah,
but
that's
Pat,
a podcast.
thank you for, again, like when we spoke on the phone, it was like we want these podcasts to be able to share our experience to players, to coaches, to parents, to officials, so that we know that we're not all in this alone. We're in this as a community. We're in this to learn off of one another. None of us knows it all, so let's just share our knowledge, share our experience, so that we can start to slowly evolve, so that we can make hockey the greatest game on the planet, like it is. Just make it even better. So thanks for joining me, brother. I appreciate it.
And like you said, I'm not a doctor by any means, but if anybody ever has any questions, I can tell you how I dealt with them. I can't tell you how you can deal with them, but I can, like I said, I can tell you how I managed or didn't manage the problem at the time or the situation, and maybe there'll be some insight of what to do or what not to do. Like I said, learning from my mistakes my my successes one way or another. So, or if you just want having a bad day and need some goofy, big, fat, balding guy to help you out again, I'm always here.
What are you talking about? You or me?
I'm saying you can always call me. Yeah, you still got some mine. I got
Going back here, buddy. If I lean forward, you'll.
mine at the back too.
All right, dude. Listen, thank you so much, and thank everybody else for joining us to the Retribe podcast. The one and the only Paxton Schulte. Till next time, brother. Talk later.
Bye bye.